We are quorum.
We are.
Okay, well, let's
Yes,
begin
we're live,
then.
Don, yes.
Okay, so welcome everybody to the Avon Fire Authority meeting for 24th of March. This is being done in a virtual way, as I'm sure you can all tell. I'm going to start by asking people to introduce themselves. So I'm going to go around my list and I'm going to ask people to introduce themselves, who they are and which authority they are from to begin with. So I've got John Ash.
Chairman, John Ash isn't here yet. He's lost his access details. Okay. So I'm about to send a message to Emma to ask her to send them again. So.
Right.
Oh, okay, will do.
Shelley Bromley.
So good afternoon. Shelley Bromley, Councillor for Western Ward in Bath and North East Somerset.
Neil Butters.
Good afternoon, Councillor Neil Butters, Councillor for Bath Avon South Ward, which is villages between Bath and Bradstock on Bath and North East Somerset Council.
Hi, well, I'm Don Davis. I'm a North Somerset Councillor and Chair of the Fire Authority. Tony Davis.
Not seen at the moment.
Not seen. He's probably so excited of Yate being awarded the most resilient small town in the country that he's celebrating. Richard Eddy? No?
No.
Paul Goggin. I think I've seen Paul.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, Councillor Paul Goggin. I represent Hartcliffe and Withywood Ward in Bristol, at least for another few weeks.
I'm sure that's much longer. Brian Hopkinson?
No, Chair,
No.
he's not here.
Ruth Jacobs?
Yes, hello, North Somerset Council, Councillor for Wixon Lawrence and St George's, Weston-super-Mare.
Carol Johnson? No.
No.
Trevor Jones. I think Trevor's here.
I'm here, Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Councillor Trevor Jones, one of two councillors in South Gloss for Winterbourne Ward.
Sultan Khan?
Good afternoon, all. Sultan Khan, Councillor for Eastville Ward, Bristol City Council, Lib Dem.
Cleo Lake?
She's on her way, Chair.
Okay. Brenda Massey?
Good afternoon. My name is Brenda Massey. I'm Councillor for Southmead Ward and I'm also Vice Chair of the Authority.
Thank you, Brenda. I think Adam Monk is sent his apologies.
That's right, Chair.
Yeah. Paul Myers?
Yeah, Councillor Paul Myers, Baines, Midsummer Norton Redfield.
Robert Payne?
Good afternoon. Robert Payne, Councillor for Weston-super-Mare Central on North Somerset Council.
Celia Phipps?
Good afternoon, everybody. Celia Phipps, representing Bedminster Ward, Bristol City Council.
Lovely, thank you. Richard Tucker?
He'll be slightly late, Chair, but he will be here.
And Chris Windows?
No, he's not joined either, Chair.
Okay. I've just seen a message come up from Cleo. Are you here, Cleo? I understand you're not very well. I don't know if you're actually online or not.
Yeah, I've just messaged in the chat, which means I am here. Greetings, everyone. Councillor Cleo Lake, Bristol, representing Cotton.
Lovely. Thanks, Cleo. And sorry you're not feeling very well. Okay. And Sue Mount-Stevens?
Good afternoon, everyone. Sue Mount-Stevens, Police and Crime Commissioner for a few more weeks.
Okay. And we have several other people on the screen for you. We've got Sam Wilcock from Bristol City Council who's taking the minutes. If you see Sam, hi Sam. And we have James Mason, our new very important person who can introduce himself.
Yes, James Mason here. I'm the independent person.
Okay, and I'm going to go around the officers. I've got Amanda Brown.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Amanda Brown. I'm the Clerk and Monitoring Officer for Avon Fire Authority.
Danielle Neal.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Danielle Neal, Treasurer to Avon Fire Authority.
Mick Crennell.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mick Crennell. I'm the Chief Fire Officer and Chief Exec for Avon Fire and Rescue Service. Thank you very
Simon Shilton.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Simon Shilton. I'm one of the Assistant Chief Fire Officers.
Steve Imrie.
Hello, everybody. Steve Imrie, one of the Assistant Chief Fire Officers.
We've got Justin Hobbs.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Justin Hobbs. I look after the Risk Intelligence Unit for Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Peter Davis.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Pete Davis. I'm Avon Fire and Rescue Services Liaison Officer with Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services.
Simon Richards.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Simon Richards. I'm Head of Property Services for Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Angie Feeney.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon. I'm Angie Feeney. I'm the Director of Corporate Services here at Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Tanya Nathan.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Head of Procurement here at Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Okay. Amber Foreman.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amber Foreman, Head of Corporate Communications at Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
And Steve Quinton.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Quinton. I'm the Group Manager responsible for prevention and protection.
Mark Watson.
Good afternoon, Mark Watson. I'm Station Manager for Integrated Risk Management for Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
And I noticed we've now been joined by Carol Johnson. Do you want to introduce yourself, Carol?
I do. I'm Carol Johnson, Councillor for Ashley Ward in Bristol.
I hear you.
Ah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you and see you.
Right. I'm Carol Johnson, Councillor for Ashley Ward in Bristol.
Thank you. A very impressive name title on my screen. Deputy Lord Mayor Councillor Carol Johnson, JP.
Absolutely.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully there's nobody else on the call who I haven't introduced. If there is, please shout. Oh, I've forgotten someone.
Chair, I've had a message from Tony Davis saying he can't get into Zoom. It says the host has another meeting in progress. Emma could have a look at that.
Yes, I will do. And Councillor Windows has just asked for the link again, so he'll be joining shortly.
Okay, right. So I'm going to treat this, Amanda, as the apologies for absence for those who are not here and people may join. Emergency evacuation procedures, as we're all assuming at home, there should be none, but I don't know if there's anybody at HQ, but I'm assuming they're all trained fire officers or fire staff who know what to do. Can I confirm that, Chief Fire Officer?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair.
Okay.
Everybody will know where they're working, what their evacuation procedures are. Thank you.
Okay. And declaration of interest. The annual review of the remuneration of the CFO is linked to the pay of the Service Leadership Board and the Statutory Officer. Those individuals have declared an interest in that paper.
So when we get to that paper, Chair, everyone will leave bar me because it's me to present the paper, and they'll be meeting room and invited back in.
All right, now we get onto my EasyJet cabin crew routine. I've got to advise you that the meeting will be video recorded and live streamed onto our YouTube channel. By remaining on the Zoom call, attendees are agreeing for their images and voice recording to be posted. There won't be any air masks falling down from above, but I've got to say, in view of the current restrictions that COVID-19 has placed on everybody, including the Fire Authority, this meeting of Avon Fire Authority will take place using Zoom this afternoon. To ensure the meeting goes as smoothly as possible, there are several points and guidelines I'd like to run through with members and for the benefit of any members of the public that are watching the live stream of this meeting. Once the meeting begins, attendees will be placed onto mute unless invited to speak by the chair of the meeting. If members wish to speak or to have a question, please indicate this by sending a message using the chat function. This will be monitored at the end of each item. There'll be opportunity for members to speak in turn. The open section of a Fire Authority meeting will be video recorded and live streamed onto the Avon Fire Authority, Avon Fire and Rescue Service YouTube channel. By attending a meeting via Zoom, attendees are agreeing for their images and voice recording to be posted. Due to the reduction of the length of the meetings, it is intended that for reports, provided for informational noting, a full discussion will not take place. Please keep any mobile phones on mute to avoid interruptions and interference with sound. Public access statements not able to be presented at the meeting by the author will be received by members and published along with the minutes of the meeting. There is a time limit of 30 minutes for public access. No public access statements have been received for this particular meeting. Okay. In terms of voting, the votes will be taken on the basis that I will ask if anybody wishes to vote against, anybody wishes to abstain, then I will take it that everybody else is voting for the motion. Okay, thank you. Right, now onto the social calendar business of the meeting. For several colleagues, this is their last meeting. So I'd like to, and please if I got this wrong, would you tell me otherwise, that Tony Davis, Cleo Lake and Celia Phipps will not be returning to the Fire Authority for a variety of reasons. And indeed, after a very short attendance with us, our PCC, Sue Mount-Stevens, is also leaving, though I think that possibly there is some degree of joy in that statement, Sue. You're not meaning to have been here at all for the last year.
No, well, I've just it's much appreciated, and
thank you.
I have to say, Purda is not going quite to plan at the moment.
Okay, well, well, thank you for everything that in terms of working with the police colleagues over the last many years in which you've been at the helm. I think we've got a very strong relationship, not least Sharon's headquarters. So could you pass on our thanks to all your service colleagues? I don't know if Tony Davis is on the call, so I can't embarrass him by thanking him. Tony's been on the authority for very many years, and with our restriction on time of membership, his time now comes to leave us. So I'd like to record, please, all our thanks to Tony Davis for the work he's done as a member and indeed as a committee chair. And I think, Celia, you've had valiant service within our pensions and our HR work. So thank you very much for that, in addition to everything else you've done. And Cleo, for your chairing of our People and Culture Committee over the last many years. So I don't know if any colleagues who are about to leave us want to say anything to members and those watching and officers.
I'll just make a quick comment. I've really enjoyed my time, and it may be that I am back again at another time, but I've served 6 years now and thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's been really great seeing the development of the Fire Authority whilst I've been in office. Thank you.
And clear. Establish to Tony Davis, I think, is still trying to get in. Has Emma had any luck at all?
Councillor Butters, I've emailed Tony. He's not in the waiting room, so I've asked him to leave and to try and get in again. I haven't heard anything more from him.
Okay. And Cleo, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, just to say that I've also enjoyed my experience here. It's been really invaluable to me, and to witness the journey since when I joined the authority to where we are now is significantly different in a very, very positive way. And that it's been a slog at times, but it's been really worthwhile. So yeah, thank you. It's been my highlight really of local government, and I will miss it. So yeah, I hope to stay involved somehow.
Well, of course, if you're successful in your election bid, you may well be joining us again.
You're not allowed to say that, Don.
Why not?
Don't know. You have, I haven't.
And equally, if any other candidates on the call, I'm sure the same applies to them. Okay, so we've now welcomed Chris Windows, who was beaten technology to get here, and John Ash. Okay, welcome, guys. So as we continue the EasyJet performance, the Fire Authority has now published its pre-election guidance, which remains in place until the polls close on the 6th of May 2021. Elections are taking place in Bristol City Council, PCC, the West of England Combined Authority Mayor, Bristol City Council Mayor members Mayor. Members and officers are encouraged to read the guidance and to act in accordance with it. Fire Authority meetings will continue to deal with the day-to-day business for the Fire Authority. And our next meeting will be on the 30th of June, which will be our AGM. Now I'm going to check with Amanda that I've done all the pre-flight checks.
The Chair, the only thing to point out about the June AGM meeting is that had been put back to the end of June, and the reason for that was because we felt the gap between the 9th of June and the elections in Bristol wasn't sufficient for them to nominate elected members to the Fire Authority. So this will allow us to have an induction of new members on the 18th of June and then the AGM on the 30th of June.
Thank you. Okay, so we now go on to, I think, item 5.1, if my agenda is correct, which is the minutes of the Fire Authority. So the minutes of the ordinary meeting on the 10th of February.
And it's, Chair, it's the 10th of February 2021. So I've noted that amendment needs to be.
Okay, so with that one amendment, will anybody propose acceptance of those? Brenda Massey and seconded by Shelley Bromley. Thank you both of you. Are there any votes against? Any abstentions? We'll note that as passed and thank you. Item 6 is public access. There is none. Can I just confirm that, Madam Clerk? Yes?
No public access statements.
Lovely, thank you. Minutes of ordinary meetings, the People and Culture Committee on the 10th of December 2020, and I'll ask the chair of that committee, Cleo Lake, to propose those to be accepted.
Yeah, happy to propose.
Do we see a seconder? Brenda Massey, thank you. Are there any votes against? Any abstentions? Emma's not signalling, so I'll take those as unanimously approved. Thank you. Now we move on to item number 9 for this first item for decision, which is the service plan. We did see this at the last meeting. The document has been circulated with the papers, and I believe Simon.
It's item 8, is it not?
It's item 8, yes.
No, item 8. Sorry, but what does say 9?
Yes.
8. And Simon Shilton, are you going to present this, Simon?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you. Good afternoon, members. The paper in front of you presents to you the service plan for the year 2021 to 2024. And an authority are asked the recommendation of the report to note progress on the actions set out in the service plan from 2020 to 2023 and approve the publication of the service plan 2021 to 2024 presented for sign-off by members today. Before I do that and run through how we've got to this point, members, I'd just like on behalf of the Chief Forest and Service Leadership Board to pay thanks and recognition to 3 officers who are on the meeting today, and that's Justine Hobbs, Mark Watson and Amber Foreman, as well as other members of their team who have worked extremely hard to get the service plan for this to this position and presented in front of you today. So in regards to the service plan, it is a rolling 3-year service plan. And in essence, this is a contract that we have with our communities as a fire and rescue service. It outlines our risk methodology within the document itself, which highlights who, why, what, where and when somebody is at risk. And it also sets out our 2 key priorities of making our communities safer and making our organisation stronger through investing in our people and through investing in our service. And we deliver this through 4 key elements of our organisation, through preventing, protecting and responding, and through developing and maintaining a resilient organisation and workforce. Each year the plan is a rolling 3-year plan, so each year the plan goes through a refresh. This refresh started back in the late summer of last year, where a number of senior leaders and personnel from around the organisation went through the service plan to monitor progress and to agree that the objectives within the service plan were still aligned to our key priorities and our commitment to our communities, and refresh and update where necessary. Following that meeting and the necessary updates, the service plan was also presented to members at a member briefing session in December, where members were allowed to offer their feedback. We then went out for feedback on our social media platforms, so using Twitter and Facebook, internal mechanisms through key stakeholders internally, and also once again shared with members for further feedback. We obtained feedback over the period of January and the beginning of February. We acknowledged that feedback, made necessary amendments based on feedback to the service plan. We then touched base again with members in March at the last member briefing session, late February, at the last member briefing session, and that has culminated in where we are today in the presentation of the service plan for the next 3 years that are in front of you today. Now, I just want to go back to recommendation B, which states approval for publication of the service plan 2021-2024. Just members noting, since publishing this on Basecamp, we have noted a few minor errors that we will make some adjustments to, mainly sort of wording errors prior to formal publication on our website and out to our communities. So that presents the service plan to you members here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I think we all echo our thanks to the officers who've worked so hard on this, and indeed thanking members for their comments as well, because this has been very much a joint piece of work. So thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions, Emma?
I can't see any, Chair.
Okay. Well, the recommendation is we're asked to note the progress of the actions in the service plan and approve for publication the service plan.
Chair, I don't know how many tweaks we need in terms of correcting errors, but is it possible to record those for the minutes or not, Simon?
Yes, certainly. It's just a minor amendment to some typo errors in the financial figures, which we've already got the information for that, and the omission of a statement within the beginning of the plan, which had been previously issued in previous versions. It's just. Are
you able just to tell us which pages they appear on?
I do my best, Amanda. Just bear with me. So the contents page. There is an omission in the contents page itself, which is page 26 of your papers, and that is relating to the accessibility statement, and that will need to be included. So that is an admin error. And finally, on the final page of the plan, which I can just try and locate it for you, if you could bear with me, please, members. In the financial figures on page 97 of your paper, there's some slight amendments to the capital funding figures within there.
So I think, Chair, if we could just amend the recommendation that we approve the service plan subject to amendments on page 2 and page 73, which are pages 26 and 97 of the bundle, then those corrections can be made. Okay, so subject to that amended motion, do I find a proposer and a seconder, please? I've got Neil Butters proposing and Brenda Massey seconding. Apologies, I can't see every member's picture when I ask these questions. So if I'm missing you, I do apologise. So, is anybody voting against those recommendations as amended? Are there any abstentions? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. Now we'll move on to item number 9, which is the medium-term financial plan, and our Treasurer, Danielle, is going to present that, I think.
Yeah. Can I just ask that a fully updated service plan is issued as the definitive document, please?
I think we have to publish it, Neil, so I guess the answer is going to be yes to that, but I'll get the Chief Officer to confirm that.
Yeah, absolutely. With members' permission today, which we've just accepted, the plan will be published in an electronic format only, so that we're not printing copies of it, and we'll go live on our website as of the 1st of April.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Danielle, the medium-term financial plan paper number 9.
Thank you, Chair. Just to introduce this paper to members, this is our 4-year financial strategy, and it's based on the approved 4-year financial strategy from last year that members approved, and we've updated this for the approved 2021-22 revenue budget, which members approved in February, and any other known changes or changes in projections. As members can see on page 99, in section 3, the financial implications, the financial strategy is showing a balanced position over the 4 years, which is linked to utilising approved reserves and achieving additional savings, excuse me, in 23-24. It's important to note that in developing this strategy, the finance team have undertaken financial modelling around some of the key issues. And this is in line with best practice and with external auditors' recommendations. Throughout the paper, there are a number of issues which have been highlighted, including income, pay and non-pay. And on the assumption that everybody's read the detail of that, I would really like to focus on the financial risks and the mitigations for those risks. So on page 102, section 5.21, members can see the key financial risks, which are around uncertainty in future funding levels, possible reductions in government and council funding, and we're all aware of the impact of COVID, so we've included some prudent assumptions around that. Pay awards, we don't know what that will be in the future, and in the same vein, things like inflation levels again. There's also in section F a note from the clerk on possible increased pension costs, and that's a complex area in its own right, but it's worth noting for this report. There's also future operational burdens and additional requirements, which we would expect from things like Grenfell Tower inquiry. So just to talk through with members how we have looked to mitigate that financial risk. As I mentioned earlier, the finance team have undertaken detailed modelling, including sensitivity analysis on the key risks within this strategy. We've also based this 4-year strategy on the approved 21-22 annual budgets, which the members approved. As members are aware, we've also introduced over the last 9-10 months a finance improvement programme, which has sought to strengthen financial control and reporting in the organisation. And as members are aware, we are looking to move to a devolved budgetary control framework in the next financial year, which again will help monitor and control the revenue budgets. We've also incorporated essential reserve for unknown contingencies, which is in line with best practice. And the finance team have now started finance business partnering, which again will strengthen financial control and financial reporting. So on that basis, I would like to ask members to approve the 4-year financial strategy today. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Are there any questions?
Chair, just one very small.
Neil, please, yeah.
In 5.1, practice as a noun, of course, is spelled with a C rather than an S.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just to show I read it.
So, any other questions, Emma? Sue Mount Stevens has got the old-fashioned method, putting her hand up.
Thank you, Don. Should there be a reference to the white paper that's coming out on the reform of fire, just to highlight that may increase the risks?
Yeah, I think in recognition of that, I think it's unlikely to increase financial risk, knowing what the potential white paper is going to include around what the minister is highlighting as reform areas for the service around professionalisation, around people and the people pillar, and the other one is around governance. I think they're unlikely to include a significant financial risk, but I certainly think that that's something that we may, because consultation will be towards the end of this year and probably impact more on next year's budget. So I think it's something that we can take forward into next year's consideration around the medium-term financial plan that we publish next year. It won't impact on this plan, I would suggest.
No, I can follow that logic completely, Mick. I suppose I was concerned not only about the governance issues that are going to be discussed, but also the coterminosity where the Southwest has been particularly highlighted. But you're right, that's not going to affect in the next 12 months.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything? I've seen one thing in chat. Anything more, Emma, from your? Have you seen anything?
No, Chair.
Okay. Trevor Jones has made a comment which I don't quite understand. Trevor, do you mind?
Sorry. Yes, I'm peeved that I missed the Aaron Neal spotted.
All right.
But mine is the first line of section 320 at the bottom of page 117.
It's the paper I'm getting to, so it's the next paper.
Oh, sorry. I jumped the gun.
You're too keen, Trevor.
Right, fine. That's why I was having difficulty, Trevor. So thanks for the clarification. That way, you're at front of the list for the next section. Then, so is there no further questions? I think thank you, Danielle, and your team for this. I guess this is going to be, I mean, Sue Mount Stevens has highlighted, but one of the many unknowns which are going to start to affect us over the next several months. I think probably the other one is the implications of Grenfell Tower and building control reforms. I think that is extremely likely to hit us next year in terms of extra officer time taken to examine, building regulations more widely from the certainly movement of travel of government presently. We have a recommendation to approve the 4-year medium-term financial plan. Do I see a proposer for this, please? Robert Payne, a seconder. I've got Ruth Jacobs. Do I have any votes against? Do I see any abstentions? No. Thank you. So that's passed unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. I see that we've got Richard Tucker and Tony Davis have now joined us. So welcome all.
Thank you.
Okay, so now move on to item 10. Trevor Jones is poised with his question, Amanda, but we have several recommendations. So thank you, not only Amanda, but also the colleagues who have spent an awful lot of time in our constitution review and updating work. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you've correctly identified, this is really the work of the Constitution Working Group, as they've retitled themselves at the last meeting, rather than a task and finish working group, because actually we've realised you're never finished with this job. So they are now the Constitution Working Group. They've identified a number of further amendments to the Constitution since your last meeting when you considered this in December. So what I've tried to do is do a list of all the various things that have been identified, and I've attached them all as appendices for you to consider. So I'll quickly run through the list which you're asking to approve today. So Appendix 1 is the new contract procedure rules, which have been out for circulation for quite a while now. So I think all members have had an opportunity to give feedback on those. There is a separate definitions document attached to those contract procedure rules, which is Appendix 2. We've got consequential amendments to the Constitution just to reflect the membership of the Police and Crime Commissioner, and that's at Appendix 3. New arrangements for public participation in fire authority and committee meetings at Appendix 4. I will come to the detail about that in a moment because I think that's worth a further explanation. Amendment to specified amount for the independent person who we've now appointed. So that was changed as part of the appointment process, but wasn't amended in the Constitution. So that's already been decided by the Fire Authority, and it's just getting the Constitution to agree. Updated terms of reference for the local pension board at Appendix 5. That's really just to provide for an annual report to you, Fire Authority members, about pension work. Updated Chief Fire Officer's scheme of delegation for ill health retirements at Appendix 6. I will deal with that in a bit more detail because that's slightly more complicated. Updated terms of reference for the People and Culture Committee at Appendix 7, and that's related to the Chief Fire Officer taking on some ill health retirement work. Updated terms of reference for the Performance Review and Scrutiny Committee, just to bring those TORs in line with all the amendments we've made to the other committees. consequential amendments to the scheme of delegations and specified amounts so that they match in with the new contract procedure rules. And then finally, replacement of the term principal officers throughout the Constitution because it was never properly defined. And instead it will be replaced throughout with service leadership board members to make it clear. So those are all the areas. The Constitution Working Group met and discussed those on the 9th of February and the 1st of March and have agreed the amendments which I've presented to you. If I can jump really to what I see as the ones that need a bit more explanation. So if we deal first with public participation, you will recall that we had a public access statement from a member of the public asking that we move away from not allowing members of the public to present their questions and that we allow public participation in a virtual environment. We have discussed that at length, and what the compromise that I think members felt happy with was to allow members of the public to record themselves reading their statements and to submit that to us, and we will play it during the meeting. And then we will review this process when and if the law changes in relation to virtual and hybrid meetings going forward. What this has meant is I've had to amend the public access to meetings of the Fire Authority information note, which appears on our website. And so that is the document Appendix 4, which sets out how it would work in practice. So I'm hoping that the members will consider that. The other, I suppose, major amendment is about the Chief Fire Officer's scheme of delegation for ill health retirements. You may be aware that ill health retirements are considered not only for the firefighters' pension schemes, but also the local government pension scheme. And what the working group were asked to consider was whether the process we use currently, whereby cases are saved up for the People and Culture Committee, is the most efficient and effective process. I'm conscious that people were having to wait for determinations, and it was felt that up to a certain level, the Chief Fire Officer could determine those applications himself, which would speed up the process and make it more efficient. But it would also allow the committee to deal with cases that the Chief Fire Officer believes should be referred to them, or matters where the individual concerns wants to appeal a decision to the People and Culture Committee. So there's several sort of provisions in there which protect members. So one is that if the allowances which someone will get under a pension exceed 500k over 3 years, that would always go to People and Culture. If the case reflects service leadership board or statutory officers, then that would also go to People and Culture. And also if the Chief Fire Officer himself regarded it as a case he'd rather not determine for whatever reason, he can also refer those cases to People and Culture. So it's just an efficiency method really, and to ensure that we have People and Culture available to do the next stage if needed of any appeal. So that suggestion is at Appendix 6. And the consequential amendments to the People and Culture Committee TORs is at Appendix 7 and has been approved by Councillor Lake. The other amendments, I think, are relatively minor. So unless people want me to talk them through the whole paper, I intend to pause there and take any questions.
Okay. Emma, do we have any questions? Or Brenda, I've seen Brenda Massey's finger go up. Should we go for Brenda first?
Thank you, Chair. I've just spotted another typo, Amanda. Really sorry. On that one about public participation, in section, how do I participate in virtual meeting? Bullet point 4 actually says, Democratic Services will contact you if you any reason. I think it should be if for any reason.
Okay, I need to find that.
Yeah. I'll send it to you afterwards. I thought we'd proofread these documents so many times, but we still skip over some.
It's lucky we're not at school, Brenda, else we were getting a very poor mark, weren't we?
I'm afraid you'd need lines and
teacher assessments. I've got Trevor Jones. Mustn't forget Trevor.
Yes, Trevor had an amendment at paragraph 3.20. In all cases where social value are being delivered, it should be is being delivered.
Okay, plural rather than singular. Neil Butters, who's muted.
Sorry, lots of good work here. I'm just thinking, about 3.1, whether we shouldn't be referring to the previous work. I mean, you and I, Chair, were part of a previous working group on the Constitution that met at least 7 occasions, and maybe that should be reflected in that.
So thank you, Councillor. I think when I did my paper in December, I referred to all the previous meetings last year, and in this paper I've explained that this is really to update the position since December. So yes, there have been numerous meetings of the working group. I didn't intend to rehearse every single one in this paper because you have already approved some amendments in December. No,
but it goes back before 2020 though.
Oh, I see. So I didn't know whether that was already incorporated in an old version of the Constitution, but are you saying that was also incorporated from 2019?
Well, we've been reviewing the Constitution since about 2018, Amanda, where those changes were incorporated. I think this is the latest tranche of changes. I think probably best way to describe it. Is that okay, Neil?
Yeah, thank you.
So I can't see any physical hands being waved. Are there any chat waves, Emma?
No, Councillor.
Okay, right, lovely. So subject to the.
Sorry, Brenda's got her hand up.
Brenda.
I wasn't going to ask a question. I just wanted to comment and say how pleasing it was that we all worked together on this document, and we've spent a lot of time going through it. And I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved, and the poor officers who've had to go back every time after we've said, I don't like that comma there, or I don't like that apostrophe and things like that. As we've demonstrated today, we're still doing it. It is a live thing that we have to do, and that's why we agreed we would keep it going and amend any issues that come up, because we are in a time of an awful lot of change regarding this sort of approach. So thank you to everyone who's been involved. I really did appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm sure we'd all echo that, Brenda. So there are several recommendations at 2 on page 107 of the papers. I'm not going to read them all out, colleagues, so I'm going to take it as read. Amended subject to the changes that were noted by colleagues in the minutes. I'm going to look for a proposer. Brenda Massey, a seconder. Ruth Jacobs, thank you. Do I find any votes against the recommendation? Are there any abstentions? Emma? No,
can't see
anyone. Okay, so that's unanimously passed. Thank you, colleagues. We'll now move on to item 11, which is again with our clerk.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this paper is relating to the pay policy statement, which we issue each year, and this is the 21-22 version. So you're being asked to approve the pay policy statement, which is at Appendix 1, and to authorise me as your clerk to add some details to that statement after publication, once we have the gender pay gap reporting statistics for 2020 and statistics available in relation to BAME staff. I understand there is an update about that, so I think Simon Shilton will be able to notify us of that shortly. But if I can just take you through my report. The pay policy statement is a requirement under the Localism Act 2011. The statement must include certain things, including the remuneration of chief officers, the remuneration of the lowest paid employees, and the relationship between the chief officers' remuneration and those who are not chief officers. The proposed statement has, as I said, been prepared as an Appendix 1. It is also connected to another item on your agenda. You will see further down on the agenda at item 14, I will be outlining the annual review of the remuneration of the Chief Fire Officer. So figures in that paper also appear in this pay policy statement. So if you made any decisions subsequently at item 14 that affects this pay policy statement, we may need to come back to it on the agenda. But if I turn to the document itself and just point out a couple of things to you, You will see on page 173 of the bundle that it starts with the remuneration of the chief officers. Now they're under the Gold Book Terms and Conditions of Service. And for the chief fire officer, you have a 2-track system. So you have a national agreement, which is negotiated through the National Joint Council and announced each year. And then you have the authority to make a local award as well, if you so wish. Now, in relation to your chief fire officer, the announcement each year is made from the 1st of January. So the pay, any pay increase takes effect from the 1st of January. Now, because of COVID last year, the announcement was not made until the very end of the year, so the 23rd of November. So actually, all this pay policy statement tells you today is the rate which was announced for the 1st of January 2020, which we heard about in November. The pay award for 1st of January 21 has not yet been announced. So I'm in this unfortunate position of having to present you a statement which contains figures which we know are already out of date, but we don't have the announcement of the January 21 position. So that's the green book, the gold book. You then turn over the page to page 174, and I set out the situation in relation to other uniformed and operational staff. They are classified as grey book staff, and slightly confusing, their pay is negotiated and the annual award announced on the 1st of July each year. So rather than January, they're announced in July. We do know the figure for them for last July, but we don't know the figure which may be announced for them from this 1st of July. And then finally, remuneration of corporate services staff, they come under something called the Green Book. And rather confusingly, their announcement for the National Award is made on the 1st of April each year. So we have this constantly changing picture, I'm afraid, but we do know the figures from 1st of April 20, and we're just waiting for the announcement for 1st of April 21. And I'm aware that this is an issue which is in the press quite a lot about public sector pay at the moment. More sections of the policy deal with such things as the fact that the Fire Authority is a living wage employer. And then at section 6.1 on page 175, there is a table which sets out the Chief Fire Officer and other members of the Service Leadership Board's pay. The figure which is correct for the Chief Fire Officer is the new appointment figure in that column, new appointment. The reason for that is when he was appointed in 2018, it was decided that the pay would be reduced. And so existing post holders which held their positions before he was appointed are still paid as a percentage of the existing post holders column. But for the Chief Fire Officer and anyone appointed after him, it's the new appointments column. So sorry, again, that's slightly complicated. So hopefully that's explained to you the highlights of that report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer those.
Thank you, Amanda. Do we have any questions or comments?
I can't see anything, Chair.
I can't see any hands up either. So we've got...
No.
Perhaps we can ask Simon to give us a quick update on when...
Oh, sorry, Simon, yes.
The gender pay gap might be available.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Chair. So we have the draft gender pay gap report that has just recently been provided to the service following analysis. Just kind of the top line headings for members' awareness as we finalise the document for publication. In regards to the breakdown of staff, so a number of male employees, 739, which equates to 82.8%. Number of female employees, 154, which equates to 17.2%. In relation to the average hourly rate, women employees would attract an hourly rate of £14.68 on average, where the male employees are £15.37 on average, giving a pay gap of 69 pence per hour, which equates to an average pay gap of 4.48%. And that's a an improvement on last year, an improvement of a reduction of 0.39% on the average on the pay gap from previous year. That's mainly down to the development work that the organisation has been undertaking for opening up opportunities for staff across the organisation, and specifically in the area of corporate services and providing job opportunities within the corporate services through restructure and through recognising talent and leadership ability as well. And also, if we map that against the national average of the pay gap, gender pay gap, the national average is 7.4%. So you can see we're well below the national average for our gender pay gap. We recognise there are still more for us to do, particularly when we look at grey book conditions of service, as Amanda outlined earlier on. So that's the brief headlines, members, for you today. Thank you.
And of course, that's caveated by Amanda's comments about the difference in time of measurement in relation to the time of the pay awards. So there is a degree of flex in those numbers anyway, isn't there? Okay, are there any questions or comments?
I think Richard Tucker had a question.
Richard?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay, so thank you for that. And in due course, you will advise us of item B on the recommendations when that's going to come out. Thank you. So you have two recommendations here. On page 169, the approval of the pay policy statement and authorise the clerk to add the pay policy statement, the gender pay gap, and the BMAME statistics when available. So do I see a proposer for that? I've got Trevor Jones and Neil Butters seconding. Thank you, gentlemen. So are there any votes against? Are there any abstentions? Emma?
No, Chair.
Thank you, colleagues. That's unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Move on to item number 12, which is the capital programme, and our Treasurer and our Chief Forester are going to present that.
Thank you, Chair. If I can start, and then I'll pass over to the lead directors for the capital programme. So this report presents the 3-year capital strategy, and it's based on the approved 2023 capital strategy that the Fire Authority approved last year, and it's then been updated for any known items. If I could give a short overview of the key financial issues, and then I'll pass over to Angie and Simon for the operational items. So this capital strategy, which is shown in Appendix 1, shows total expenditure over the 3 years of 17.433 million. And this includes the projected underspend from the current financial year of 5.147 million. Can I note for members, there is an item that I've picked up in section 3.14, where the additional borrowing figure needs to be 10.314 million to reconcile to the appendix. So apologies for that. Just in case anyone spotted that, I thought I should declare it. Okay, so moving on in terms of the key issues. In section 3.12 of the report, which is headed Prudential Borrowing, so this is about external borrowing. We've largely been able to defer further external borrowing, mainly due to utilising the receipt of the sale proceeds from the previous HQ building, and also from some of the underspends. So we are not projecting that we need to borrow additional external borrowings until the last quarter of 21-22. But that's assuming there is no further slippage on the capital programme. If there is slippage on the capital programme, it may be that we don't need to borrow any additional funds in the next financial year. One last item that I'd like to bring to members' attention is that, as we all know, when we fund capital strategies and we use external borrowings, there is a cost of capital that we need to account for. and it's a real cost. It's about repayment of the loan and the interest on the loan. And I've noted in section 3.14 that the increase, the impact of the projected borrowing over the 3 years would increase our capital financing cost, which is included in the medium-term financial plan, from 741,000 in 21-22 to 1.12 million in 23-24. So on that note, if I could pass over to Angie and Simon to give us an update on the operational side of this capital programme. Thank you.
Happy to go first, Chair.
Yes, Angie, sorry. Yes, I thought you'd choreograph this better. Go on.
And my choreographing is going to continue because I've got my head of property here today.
Right.
And I'd like him to have the opportunity to run through the capital on premises for us. Obviously, I'll pick up anything that I need to after that. Thank you, Chair.
So is that going to be you, Simon?
Yes, thanks, Chair. So I'll just give you a quick kind of outline of where we're heading on the property and premises capital programme. So as you'll be aware, in the main, that's driven by our major projects, and our current live project is the redevelopment of Avon Fire Station, which is now nearing completion. We've had some delays as a result of COVID, particularly around the numbers of staff that we can have on site carrying out work to complete that project, but overall no significant delays. We're looking at between an 8 and a 10-week delay, and we're looking for that project to be complete June, July of this year. So that's progressed well. There have been some additional costs associated with those COVID delays, but they form part of our claim around COVID costs for the service, which has gone forward, and they're covered there. The other two projects which are still in design and development are the redevelopment of Weston and Bath fire stations. They're both at a similar stage, and we're moving towards the end of the concept design into detailed design. And that should be complete within the current financial year, and then we'll move forward with the preferred options for both schemes. I think the significant change, particularly for next year, has been that we have been successful in receiving a significant grant of £824,000 for investment in low carbon as part of something called the Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme. That's been quite a recent thing for us, and we found out that we'd been successful in that application in February. That comes with some significant strings attached, the biggest being that we have to spend the money by September of 2021. So that will be driving a huge amount of work for our team, particularly over the next 6 months. And the paper that follows this paper will focus on that in a bit more detail. So I don't intend to cover that in any more detail. And I guess finally, just to add, there are additional smaller scale capital projects which include things like upgrading building elements. So we've got things like roof projects, yard resurfacing, and so on. We also have investment in electric vehicle charging infrastructure as well. And that's all captured within the kind of general or other figures that are shown on the capital programme. So I don't know if there are any questions around that.
I can't see any. Oh. Emma?
No, I can't see anything, Chair.
Okay. I guess my ask, as ever with capital, is on delivery. We do seem to be at last seem to be delivering, so I'm really pleased about that, and I appreciate also that both Bath and Western stations, which are our next two big items, are problematic in some ways in terms of easy delivery. So thank you for all that you and your team have been doing. Angie, who did you want to put in the firing line next?
I think I'll go to Simon Shilton next, Chair.
Is he going to talk about appliances, is he?
I am, Chair, yes.
Is he?
Thank you.
All right.
So members, my section of Danielle's paper is on page 181, section 3.9 of the papers in front of you. Members may recall at the last Fire Authority meeting, I also gave an overview of the fleet replacement programme and the capital expenditure aligned to fleet. And I'll give a little bit more clarity to the first two lines there, in particular around the budget for this current financial year for capital fleet replacement of £2.6 £6.7 million. Now, in relation to that particular budget allocation, that referred to 5 particular projects. One being the replacement of the environmental response unit, replacement of the breathing apparatus service vehicle, replacement of the hovercraft, 4 additional frontline fire appliances, and a number of ancillary vehicles that needed to be replaced. Now, the order themselves in terms of the spending profile, whilst we need to ensure that the capital funding is available prior to going out to tender and awarding those contracts, all bar one of those 5 projects there have all now been awarded the contracts. And as such, due to the lead times within delivery, we make stage payments for each of those, in particular in relation to frontline firefighting appliances. And as such, the spending profile may well go over into the next financial year or a couple of financial years. So work that we're doing with the Treasurer and also the Head of Finance is to better reflect that spending profile, is how we report back on contract award, but also the anticipated timeframes of when that total amount for that contract is likely to be spent by the authority in relation to the details surrounding that contract in specific to stage payments. So as an example, when we place an order for a frontline fire appliance, there is an 18-month lead time. So there's at least a 9-month wait for a chassis as it stands at the moment. And then, of course, we will not require any initial payments towards that contract until we receive the chassis. And then we sign that off as a service with our contractor around the quality and the matching against the design specification. So just a little bit more clarity around that spending profile of the fleet replacement programme, and we will look to identify that in how we report that in future years and future reports to the authority. The only slight delay of that £2.6 million is the delay which I previously reported at the last Fire Authority meeting in relation to risk profiling for the replacement of the hovercraft. And so I'll pause there, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Angie? Anybody else?
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to briefly cover the ICT bit and then over to Mick for the transformation element, if that's okay with you, Chair.
That's fine with me.
Okay, so on the ICT strand of the capital programme, members will be aware that the development which was approved for our IT infrastructure had an aspect of capital spend to it. And also this reflects our profiling of our IT replacement over the coming years, as well as trying to reflect within our forecasting of that how our approach to flexible working may also be changing in light of our learning through the pandemic. So that is what that profiling of amount on the ICT line represents.
Okay, and that cross-references to our item number 17 later, doesn't it, in terms of the HMICFRS investigation into our COVID response. Okay. Chief Fire Officer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for your input on this. Not much further to add. Members will have seen the transformation programme at the last meeting and signed off the funding for that. Programme is now fully underway, and the part of that is capital spend, and that's highlighted here. I do think it's worth noting that actually we don't get capital funding. So we don't get centralised capital funding as a service. We have to either use our reserves in a very prudent way, of course, because it's one-off cash and it's gone when it's gone, or we have to raise funds and capital through borrowing and prudential borrowing. And that essentially is what's being laid out here. It's our future requirements. So, but I do think it's worth noting that we don't receive centralised funding from a capital perspective. We have to raise that cash ourselves. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I can't see any, Chair. Okay,
fine, thank you. The only question I have for Danielle, and this could certainly be sent as an email to members, in terms of items 3.14 on the the additional borrowing. It doesn't mention in terms of prudential terms what our cap would be in terms of what level of wriggle room do we have beyond where we are now.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's actually noted in Appendix 3.
What the actual maximum amount we could borrow?
Yes, Chair, in Section D on Appendix 3.
Okay. Thank you. Right, so do we have a proposer for that? I've got Paul Goggin proposing and Robert Payne seconding the recommendations, which are on, forgive me, colleagues, page 179. So anybody voting against those recommendations? Are there any abstentions?
No, Chair.
Okay, so that's passed unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. Now, item 13, which is renewable energy and low carbon schemes procurement, which I think, Simon Richards, you're going to present.
Yes, thanks, Chair. So as I briefly touched on in the last paper, we have been successful in being awarded a grant of £824,000 for investment in low carbon and renewable energy. What I'll do is briefly talk about the scheme and the funding that we've got, our application, and then the procurement and contract decision, which we're asking you to make today. So this paper concerns the delegation of that contract award decision to the Performance and Scrutiny Review Committee, largely because of the timescales, and there won't be a fire authority meeting around the time that we need to award that contract in order to deliver those projects and make the use of that income that we've been successful in awarding. So very brief bit of background: the public sector decarbonisation scheme is all about decarbonising public buildings, but particularly around heat. As we move towards an era where we won't be having gas for heating long term, it's looking to electrify where possible our heating sources, and on top of that provide additional renewable energy. We were notified of the potential to apply for this grant in October last year. We put a lot of work in to get an application into November, and our assumption was we'd find out about that contract, that application award in December. That was put back. There was a huge uptake of interest in this scheme, and it was massively oversubscribed, and the decision to allocate the money to us didn't come through until February. And we have very recently started a huge piece of work with significant input from our procurement colleagues to move forward a procurement programme to get the contractors in place to deliver this scheme. Just a little bit more detail on that. We're looking to replace existing heating systems largely, which are running on gas, with air source heat pumps, and also add to our current renewable energy system. So that's additional solar power. And one of the newer technologies which we're looking to incorporate into this, which will give us additional resilience, will be battery storage. So we can store more of the renewable energy that we're generating on site and use that at the most appropriate times, which will deliver revenue cost savings in terms of our utility costs. Onto the procurement. A big portion of that £824,000 will be on those three main technologies that I just reviewed, and that accounts for a package of around £650,000. The additional £206,000 is related to improvements in insulation works, replacement windows, and some upgrades of electrical capacity, which we're able to procure in a different way, either through existing contracts that we have in place or through smaller tender exercises. But that larger chunk is a significant tender. And what we're requesting is that the decision to award that contract is delegated to the Performance and Scrutiny Review Committee, which I believe is in April, which will align with when we get the tenders back and have had a chance to review those and make a recommendation in terms of tender award. That was all I really wanted to cover on that, unless there are any further questions about the scheme or the procurement process that we're currently undertaking.
Okay, Neil Butters has got his hand up. You're unmuted though, Neil.
Sorry, just to pick up on what it says in 3.4, the grant funding is a great achievement for the service. I think we ought to endorse that and congratulate them on this, because that's really good news. So well done.
Thanks, that's really appreciated. I probably should have added we're one of only 3 emergency services that have been successful in being awarded that grant. The government have announced some additional funding. There's another 75 million, which we're currently taking a look at now.
Okay. They've come to the best first, Simon. I think that's the reason. Show the way.
If I may add to that, Chair, I think the officers responsible should be hugely congratulated here, because they put forward a high quality bid in a very, very short space of time, whilst under a lot of pressure, whilst under COVID conditions. So, you know, I think not only is it we're one of 3 services, but actually the quality of the bid was superb. So my thanks to the team for the great work there, and what a great outcome. We now need to just spend the money in time and actually get the benefits in time. So with no pressure there.
So thank you all. Are there any more questions? Emma, can you say anything?
Danielle has a question.
Danielle.
Thank you. Just a small point, but just to note for members, with regards to Appendix 1 of this paper, it was just to note that this was the earlier version of the final capital programme, and this will be updated for publication. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I don't think there are any more questions. The only question I've got then is for Tony Davis as the chair of the committee. Are you happy to take this forward on behalf of your committee?
I'm not sure if he's with us.
I am, yes.
He is.
Happy to take it forward, Chair, but I thought this was my last meeting, but still.
Well, this is your last fire authority meeting, but not your last PRSC meeting.
Ah, right. I did wonder about that. Okay.
No, you don't get off that lightly.
Oh, bugger. Yes, quite happy to take it forward.
Lovely. Okay, so Emma, unless there's any more questions or comments, we'll go to the decision.
Can't see any, Chair.
Which is on page 188 at item 2. So I see a proposer. I've got Neil Butters proposed. I see a seconder. I've got Celia Phipps. Are there any votes against? Are there any abstentions?
Can't see any,
Emma?
Chair. No.
Lovely. Okay, so that is passed unanimously. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you very much to all our officer colleagues for producing this bid. And I think it's really brilliant that we're one of the few pathfinders in this. So thank you very much indeed. And now we move on to item 14, which is where life gets quite complicated because I've got lots of blue writing all over my notes, and I'm going to go to Emma and Amanda to guide me.
So, thank you, Chair. Emma's going to place in the waiting room those officers directly affected by this paper, and it will just be myself who remains.
Okay, so some people will suddenly disappear from the screen, which is our principal officers.
We will let them back in, I promise.
Yeah.
Right, Angie. Apologies for the delay.
That's okay, Emma.
Emma has to do everyone individually, so she can't
Right.
do mass, unfortunately. That's why.
I'm sure we can make this into a panel game. Have you got more than a lock and key, Emma?
It's just Simon, because he's a co-host. I can't remove him. Simon, I think you might need to leave the meeting and then come back in.
Yeah, I will do, Emma. Yeah, I'll leave and then just give me
I'll email you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Lovely. Good. Thank you.
Okay, so just to remind members, I also have an interest in this paper, but it is a paper I have to present to you. So
okay.
I apologise.
And Steve Quinton, you're going as well, aren't you? Thank you, Steve. Right. Okay.
So this paper is entitled The Annual Review of Remuneration of the Chief Fire Officer and Chief Executive. And the reason we've kicked various members out of the meeting is that their salaries are calculated as a percentage of his salary. So that's why if you approve an award for him, it affects everybody else. So that's why they've left the room. So these recommendations have already been considered by People and Culture Committee on the 4th of March. So I presented this paper to them already. And the recommendations are that you award no local pay increase to the Chief Fire Officer for 21-22, because you will recall it's a two-track process, a national award and a local award. So the first recommendation is no local award. And the second recommendation is you simply endorse and approve the 2% National Joint Council Pay Award that was announced the 1st of January 2020. Noting, of course, that we haven't had an announcement for the 1st of January 2021 as yet. So the paper just sets out the Gold Book terms, which I've explained to you previously. It explains the two-track approach. It also goes on to explain that the award for the 1st of January 2020 was not announced until the 23rd of November last year, which is why everything's running behind and we don't have the figures for January 21. That does present a bit of an accounting challenge for us, because I think when the announcement is made, we have to make back payments. So it's a bit unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. There is a table set out on page 195 of the bundle, which sets the salary for the Chief Fire Officer with that raise from the 1st of January 2020. He is at the new appointment rate. And then the other assistant fire officers and statutory officers rates are quoted beneath that. Of course, myself and Danielle, the statutory officers, are both part-time, so we don't receive those full salaries. We receive a pro rata.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything else I need to go through, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions or any comments?
Councillor Butters has his hand up.
That's an old hand.
Oh,
That's an old hand.
Otherwise,
okay.
No, Chair.
Okay, so we have two recommendations. I was going to ask then on the basis of that for a proposer. I've got Ruth Jacobs and I've got Trevor Jones seconding. So are there any votes against? Are there any abstentions?
Can't see any, Chair.
Thank you. So that's passed unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. And we'll have to update you in due course when there's any recommendation for a 2021 National Pay Award. So thank you for that.
So Emma, if you could now let back in the Chief Fire Officer and Danielle and the Assistant Chief Fire Officers as well.
Of course.
Okay. So we're now, can we move on to item 15? Or did you want, are Jeff Cleek and Kate Shaw here yet, Emma?
No, they're not, no.
Okay, right.
They're going to be joining us for item 16. So we've got one report prior to them. I think that Angie had agreed she was going to notify them when we're getting close so that they can.
Okay.
I have done that, Chair. So they should be joining the waiting room now for being invited in for item 16.
Okay. Okay, so go on to item 15, which have we regained Danielle?
Yes, we have.
We have. Hi, Danielle, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
To item 15, which is the Revenue Budget Monitoring Report, which is a summary of this year's situation, isn't it? Current year.
Yes, that's right, Chair. So this report gives members the latest forecast for the revenue position this year from April to the end of January 2021. As members can see, the projected underspend is 1.246 million, which equates to 2.5% of the annual income budget. And a summary of that underspend is shown in Appendix 1 and a more detailed summary in Appendix 2 for members. As members can see, the majority of the forecast underspends relates to pay, just over £500,000, and non-pay 735,000. In terms of the pay, this is largely relating to underspends on the full-time firefighters budget and a range of vacancies within the Corporate Service Directorate. With regards to non-pay, there are underspends around transport and associated expenditure, largely due to COVID. So on page 199, section 310, there's an overview and update on the Finance Improvement Programme. And this is progressing well, and detailed updates are being presented to AJAC. It's pleasing to note that internal audit have confirmed and awarded the highest financial audit recommendation for the finances and this improvement programme. And they've confirmed that financial control and financial reporting has been improved. Within the Financial Improvement Programme, this will now transfer into business as usual, which will be led by the Head of Finance. I note in section 3.12, at the end of that paragraph, it's noted 4 financial strategies, and it should be 2. Those are the 2 financial strategies that members have received today, and the Treasury Management Strategy and Reserve Strategy will be presented to members in June as approved by AJAC. There are some delays in a recruitment to the new finance restructure, and I just raised that as a potential risk in terms of the new financial year. The Director of Corporate Services and the Head of Finance are looking at options around that. So hopefully soon that risk will be minimised. In terms of devolved budgets, which is in page 200, section 3.14, members are aware that we've agreed to move towards introducing devolved budgets in the next financial year. We've agreed to introduce that in shadow form for the first 6 months, which will give SLB, SLT and lead managers and myself and finance the opportunity to review and where necessary update at that point. This has been a complex project. We have an interim project manager in who's been doing lots of detailed work. And I'm currently liaising with SLB, and the project manager and head of finance are liaising with SLT. So I think that covers the key issues, but I'm happy to take any questions from members.
Danielle, is Paul Goggin as chair of the audit committee? Did you want to say anything?
Just this has been presented to us already, and the AJAC committee have agreed with the recommendations. It's now come to the full authority, but I'd like to thank Danielle, her team, and everybody for the work that they've put in on this already.
Thank you. I'm sure we'd like to echo that. So do we have any questions or comments?
No, Chair.
Okay. This report is for noting, so I guess, does anybody not wish to note it? Does anybody wish to abstain from noting? So you're all happy to note, then thank you very much. So now we move on to item 16, which is the firefighters' pension. Now, is Angie still around on the call? Where are our visitors? Are they here yet?
I'll let them in now, Chair.
Or did we? Okay, right. So you're going to present this now, Amanda, and I will suggest that after this we'll have a quick break, okay?
Yes, that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
So pensions. Seems
Yes.
like Groundhog Day.
So members will recall that I spent quite a long time going through this issue. which following an exempt paper that I prepared for your meeting on the 10th of February. The reason that was an exempt paper and this is an open paper is the exempt paper summarised some confidential legal advice that fire authorities had been provided with, and we weren't allowed to share that more widely. This paper is open because it simply updates you on what's happened since, so there are no issues with that. The recommendations of my report are that you note the contents of the report, that you instruct the Chief Fire Officer to join the Local Government Association and other fire and rescue authorities to obtain further advice on the impact of an employment appeal tribunal decision and how to protect this fire and rescue authority with trying to implement a Home Office guidance without new legislation. I will come on to that in a moment. Also, to instruct the Chief Fire Officer to ascertain from our pension administrators who've now joined this call all the information required in relation to the affected pension scheme members so that we can start to process immediate detriment cases as soon as technically possible to do so. And then finally, to determine from those pension administrators as they start to do that work, what extra capacity / technical capability they require in order to actually start processing the immediate detriment cases. So if I turn to the substance of my paper, and I'll try not to rehearse it all, but just pick out the highlights, you will recall that the union in particular, who put in a public access statement, were very keen that we implement now the Home Office guidance that was issued to fire and rescue authorities on the 21st of August last year. And I outlined that to you in my last paper and the legal advice which was obtained on that guidance. For various reasons, the fire authority decided to follow the legal advice and to wait to see what further guidance would be issued by the government in order to protect its position. Since then, we've had a government consultation on the way forward, and those results were published after I published my last paper on the 4th of February, although I did outline that to you during my briefing last time. What's happened since is there's been an Employment Appeal Tribunal judgment, and that decided on the 12th of February that in effect, fire and rescue authorities could not rely on extant pension regulations where the provisions in those regulations had the effect of being discriminatory in terms of age. So the extant regulations have transitional protections for people as they were transferred to the new pension scheme in 2015. And the court said, no, you're not obliged to follow those extant regulations. You must now see if you can do what you can do to remove the discriminatory effect. But what the government haven't done is helped us with that. So they haven't issued as yet any further guidance or indeed any draft regulations to give us a clue on the best way to deal with this. So we have been advised that we need to get our own advice on this issue. The Firefighters Pension Schemes Bulletin, which was issued in February, highlighted a couple of issues. It said, well, first of all, there isn't the software in place to give pension members the quotes they need because they now need to make a choice between taking benefits under their legacy scheme or the new scheme, and they need to get a quote to make that choice, and the software just doesn't exist to produce those figures as yet. Also, it said that they were working on providing a template to fire and rescue authorities, which would give us the list of all the data which we would require in order to start processing claims. At the moment, the LGA have issued a matrix, and I think Angie can deal with this later if necessary, but the matrix provides us with some themes of things we need to think about, but doesn't necessarily go into the detailed fields of information that we would need to populate in order to deal with a claim. So where are we now? We've got this court decision which says you've got to get on with this. We haven't got any guidance. I went to a meeting yesterday with the Local Government Association Pensions Advisor, and they tell us they have seen that the government is about to publish more guidance. And it's imminent, but it's been imminent, it seems, for a little while now. So we're waiting. We hope it is now imminent and that is going to arrive and sort out some of the unknowns for us. Also, they have confirmed that this template that we need in order to populate all the fields of data is also being worked on, and they will provide a training event to us for how we use that as well. So it's moving in the right direction, if I can put it that way. What I think we want to do is what other fire authorities have done and start triaging claimants, you know, apply this template when it receives and work out if there are indeed straightforward cases we can get on with, as opposed to more complicated cases where we need a bit more guidance from the government. The FBU have written to me personally expressing their concern, and their letter is at Appendix 1. It's dated 2nd of March 21. And they have made very clear, you are now legally responsible for paying members their pensions after removal of the illegal transitional protections they applied. So their point of view is we need to pay members what they're due now. I have also spoken to the FBU personally, and they have reiterated to me that they are concerned, although they recognise that not every case is simple, they don't want the let's do calculations once and do it right to mean that they don't get this resolved until 2023. That's their biggest concern, because that might be the date when the new legislation is passed. So what the Chief has suggested, and so I'm presenting this paper sort of with a legal hat on and really representing the Chief as well, is yes, let's start doing what we can to collect information, to triage, to see if we can start processing some of these immediate detriment claims by doing that detailed analysis work. And then hopefully, while we're doing that work, more will come out from the government, which will enable us to make proper strides forward. Some of the complexities, for example, I set out in paragraph 4.2. It's not just a case of saying, I'll have benefits under the old scheme, please. You have to backdate your contributions into that scheme. And the employer also has to backdate their contributions. Tax relief on those pension contributions needs to be worked out. Annual allowances, pension sharing orders, interest charges. There's a whole raft of things that fall out of this, which would need to be calculated. And without software, all those calculations would have to be manual, so are likely to take a long time. My advice to the Fire Authority is that if we are reckless and go too fast without getting together all the right information, we risk having claims in the future if we get calculations wrong. And one of the things I think we will be trying to get advice on is how we can protect ourselves from future claims if we do an imperfect solution now, whether that be a waiver that's signed by someone who receives a pension or not. I don't know what the format will be, but we need to look at how we're going to protect the Fire Authority from future claims by processing applications before new regulations are issued. So the recommendations are, as I said, set out at page 205. Angie, did you want to add anything to that from the headquarters point of view?
Happy to, Amanda and Chair. It's just to say that I am, obviously this is a pressing and big issue for us as Avon Fire, as well as all of the fire sector at the moment, trying to work through the best for this, both to balance risks for us as an organisation and also for individuals. I think we all want to see individuals who are entitled to these payments receive them as soon as possible, but with as accuracy as we can get it. So I am already working with our pension administrators, which is Baines, and also our payroll, which is outsourced, which is Bristol City Council. So actually plot, in the absence of the pending template, the data that we will need to collect in order to, in effect, restore 7 years worth of employee data in order to look at what payments they would have received if they were on a different pension scheme at that time. We need to do that anyway for a whole number of employees who are affected, kind of past and present. But of course, this is about identifying the people who are most at immediate detriment and therefore considering retirement over the next kind of few years. So if the Fire Authority are content to continue that piece of work, I will continue to do that with our administrators. They of course need the data in order to then start to do the calculations. and through that process identify, kind of as Amanda has indicated there, I suppose the most simple on the range of complex cases that we can identify and try and kind of put in payment. And I am working with other fire and rescue service colleagues who are facing similar to try and add some consistency to our approach around that. And I think once that work is then done, it would be for the fire authority, I would suggest as a scheme manager to agree whether you are now content for us to put in payment some of the immediate detriment, because what you will then have is difference. Again, you will have some people that we are able to pay and some people we are not able to pay. And you will also have retirees who have already retired, who aren't affected by the immediate detriment and need to wait until 2023. But you will have people who are coming up to retirement who we're saying we might be able to pay. So it's introducing risk, but I think it will be then for the scheme manager to look at the balance of risk around what it wants to do once we've got a firmer idea from the data about what we can and can't do and who we think we can and can't get to a sufficient level of calculation and accuracy to be able to pay individuals. Okay. So we do have our administrators here if there are further kind of questions or anything on that, but appreciate this is all kind of very complicated.
Thanks, Angie. And I've got one question. I think I'm going to go to welcome Jeff and Kate, and we're going to put you on the spot in a moment. You'll be pleased to know. But Mick, Chief Fire Officer, just in terms of the scenario we have in terms of firefighters and retirees, people are still being paid their pensions. There are no people without income, are there, as a result of this?
No, of course not, Chair. No, and our want and our wish in it is to deal with this as quickly as possible in the most prudent way, and people get the pensions that they were expecting, and we'd love to do that. We'd love to wave a magic wand and do that. Unfortunately, as Amanda and Angie have described, it's a very complex picture. We want to pay people. We've got to do it as safely as possible, and we've got to do it within the law. And what's more, we need to do it by balancing risk across the organisation. But nobody has retired or is retiring or planning to retire without a pension. They will have a pension. However, they will be due some more, but there may be some patience here that's needed. I'd like to get it right, and I'd like to get it right first time, rather than further complicate the picture by having to unstitch something, restitch it, and then further unstitch it and restitch it. I just think it would be an absolute nightmare. So I'd call for patience from our staff, but I would also, we have to tread the right path here, balancing risk, as I said, balancing the wants and wishes of our staff, and get it right first time as much as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you. And I guess from a tax point of view, if we get this wrong, our retirees could potentially have substantial tax bills if we miscalculate.
Well, even if we don't miscalculate, Chair, even if we get it right, that is the case. We may have some people that have a tax bill at the end of this, and all different tax bills for different things like annual allowance and lifetime allowance, as well as in year. So it is a very, very complex picture.
Very complex thing. Okay, thank you.
I do have sympathy with our staff, but unfortunately, it is a very complex picture.
So we've got Jeff and Kate from our pensions team here to answer questions. I guess before we go open to questions, Jeff or Kate, did you also want to outline sort of some of the complexities and some of the issues that you think are around?
Yeah. Kate, you want to go on first?
Yeah, I don't mind. There are a lot of complexities, as has been kind of stressed by the other officers. I think the guidance goes some way to helping us to process cases under immediate detriment, but there are a lot of unknowns. There could be problems obtaining some of this data, or just difficulties in obtaining it. And as you point out, our system is not yet in a position to calculate benefits under immediate detriment, and won't be for some time. So it will all be very manual with risk of error. I don't know if you want to add anything, Jeff.
Yeah, all I'll say, Chair, is that we are making arrangements internally to provide the sort of technical capability to manage immediate detriment. As Kate said, and has been mentioned earlier, everything will have to be manually processed and checked and double checked because of all the implications of getting this wrong. So, you know, we're not saying that we were unable to support the Fire Authority. We are. But it's going to be a very, very carefully sort of a careful process in managing this and working with our colleagues also from your payroll department.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, are there any questions or comments? Emma, you're muted.
Sorry, can't see any, Chair, no.
Okay. Right, so we have the recommendations on page 205, 4 of them. So we've had a strong exposition of the facts from Amanda and the officer team, and indeed our colleagues from our pension administrators. So I'm going to go to the vote. Is anybody against accepting those recommendations? Sorry, I need a proposer and seconder first. Sorry, a proposer, please. I've got Paul Goggin. I've got seconded by John Ash. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. So are there any votes against?
I'm so sorry. Could you just briefly reiterate the recommendations? I'm finding it hard to scroll through my papers.
Okay, so so clear. The recommendation, the fire authorities asked to 1, note the contents of the report, B, instruct the Chief Fire Officer to join the local government association and fire and rescue authorities to obtain further legal advice on the impact of the Employment Appeal Tribunal decision on how to protect fire and rescue authorities in trying to implement the Home Office guidance without new legislation or detailed guidance covering all the complexities associated with the implementation. C, instruct the Chief Fire Officer to ascertain from pension administrators all the information required in relation to affected scheme members so that immediate detriment cases can be processed as soon as it is technically possible to do so. And D, determine from the pension administrators what extra capacity technical capability they're required to start processing immediate detriment cases.
Got it. Thanks.
So, okay, so is there anybody voting against? Any abstentions?
No.
Thank you. So that's passed unanimously, colleagues. I'm going to suggest we have a quick break. Can we come back at 10 to 4, please? Thank you.
I'm not going anywhere, Emma, because if I do, I won't come back. So I'm staying here. Have a biscuit.
Welcome back, Earl. Oh, that little sign, Emma. That's very smart.
That was actually from Sam, our minute taker. She suggested
well
that.
done,
That's what they
Sam.
do in Bristol. Yeah.
Oh, good idea. Yes. Well, I guess everybody randomly comes upon the YouTube channel and wonders what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. Let's make sure we've got our clerks here. I think we're quorate. I'm checking numbers. We've got enough people, I think.
Yes, we've got more than 7, so we're okay.
Lovely. Okay, so we'll go on to item number 17, which is the HMIC FRS report. And that's Peter Davis is going to present that, I understand.
Chair, members, good afternoon. Can I just do a sound check? Can you hear me okay?
Lovely, yeah.
Lovely, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, this report, members, is to update you on recent activity in respect of Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services. As I said on more than one occasion before, that's a bit of a mouthful in terms of the title. So for YouTube viewers, I will normally abbreviate that to either HMIC FRS, or even that is probably a bit too long, so either HMIC or HMI, so at least you know what I'm talking about. I think probably in view of the time, the fact that this paper is presented to members for information and simply to note, and also that the majority of the material covered within it was covered at the members' development session on the 12th of March. I'll try and keep this brief, just really picking out the salient points. In respect of section 3.1 and the outcomes of the first all-service HMI inspection of Avon Fire Rescue Service, the results of which were published in December 2018, members can be assured that the resulting action plan from that report is subject to regular member level scrutiny as a result of the full Fire Authority's decision on the 26th of March 2019 to delegate responsibility for ongoing monitoring of that action plan to the Performance Review and Scrutiny Committee. And therefore, I don't propose to go into that particular aspect in any detail now. Moving on to the initial arrangements just after a year ago for our next round 2 all-service inspection, we did start activity about 13 months ago for that next level of inspection, but that was soon suspended by HMI as a result of the impact of the coronavirus, as you'll see in section 2.4 onwards. That was then, it was then communicated to us that some activity would start to be rescheduled, but in the interim, on the 5th of August 2020, the Home Secretary commissioned HMI to undertake a review of Fire and Rescue Services reactions and to the COVID-19 pandemic, looking at what is working well, what was learnt, how we were responding to the crisis, dealing with the problems we faced, and what changes are likely as a result of our activity of the COVID-19 pandemic. That then led into a thematic inspection by HMI in the autumn of last year, and the results of the inspection across all 44 English Fire and Rescue Services were published by HMI on the 22nd of January in 2 main parts, a national summary report and an individual service letter for each fire and rescue service. Turning firstly to the national summary report, which is at section 3.11 onwards, and perhaps contrary to the impression that listeners to Radio 4's Today programme at 10 to 7 on the 17th of March might have gained, the overall outcome and conclusion of HMI's report was that Fire and Rescue Services responded very well to the outbreak. We maintained and we continue to maintain our ability to respond to fires and other emergencies in these extraordinary times, said the report. There was some coverage of one particular element of Fire and Rescue Services' national response to the COVID pandemic, and that was around the tripartite agreement between the National Joint Council, the National Fire Chiefs Council, and the Fire Brigades Union in respect of additional work undertaken by, in the main, operational members who are members of the FBU. That to one side, whilst there was some national comment on those arrangements, locally, we didn't become any issues in terms of meeting requests for assistance by our blue light partners and also our wider partners, particularly in the NHS. And we have done and continue to meet those requests for assistance to the benefit of our local public. That then really brings me to section 3.15, which were the outcomes reported in our local service letter, which is appended at Appendix 1 for members' information. And the key take-home message from this particular letter is how pleasing our response was and continues to be to the COVID-19 pandemic. And as HMI themselves noted, it meant that the people of Avon were better supported through the pandemic. And it was a really positive reflection of all the very hard work which has gone on across the service right from the beginning and continues to go on as detailed in section 3.18. So that's continuing support to our partners in the ambulance service, continuing support to the NHS through volunteers to the mass and local vaccination centres, with indeed some people training to become vaccinators themselves, and dynamic assistance where required to the establishment of rapid testing centres within the community. We do have a dedicated team which continues to coordinate our COVID-19 activity, but like I say, the take-home message from Appendix 1, that is the letter from HMI, is extremely positive throughout. It does provide us with two areas for focus, as the chair of the meeting alluded to earlier on in the papers. That is looking at how our adaptation and innovation to ways of working throughout the pandemic can be taken forward into business as usual to the benefit of the service, and also in terms of IT systems improvement, which, as members will recall, was already subject to your decision to invest £1.5 million over the next 5 years into our IT infrastructure. So we were already acutely aware of that requirement, and we'd already made plans to address it. Moving on then very quickly to the national developments, the State of Fire and Rescue, which is the Her Majesty's Chief Inspector's annual assessment of the state of fire and rescue services, looking back into the year 2020. At the time I wrote this report, that was due for publication imminently, and indeed it was published and laid before Parliament on the 17th of March this year. That contains Sir Tom Windsor's assessment of fire and rescue services, including progress against the 6 national recommendations, which he made, two in the Tranche 2 summary report from round 1 of inspections, and 4 in the annual State of Fire and Rescue 2019, which he published in 2020. And the impact of COVID on the completion of those national recommendations is detailed in Table 1 on page 6 of report number 17. Finally, looking forward to the ongoing work around round 2 inspections, that has now kicked off in earnest. The document and self-assessment request, which is ahead of the actual inspection itself, that was issued to us on the 18th of January with a submission deadline of this coming Monday. So everything is in hand in order to meet that deadline. And our inspection activity, most of it virtually, will commence in the week commencing 10th of May 2021. We're still unsure how any on-site reality testing will be handled, Of course, that will be subject to coronavirus restrictions and infection rates at the time. When we get to that point, we'll have to see how things are panning out. But everything is in hand, but we are now headlong into our second all service inspection, so that round 2 inspection, with the report due to be published pending the progress of the pandemic in winter 2021. So, Chair, I'll pause there, but just really to highlight the take-home message of the very positive letter from HMI in respect of our COVID response, as detailed in Appendix 1.
Thank you, Peter. And I can personally verify the fact that Fire and Rescue Service employees were at the Ashton Gate vaccination centre by the very pleasing greeting I had prior to my injection from members of the team, mentioning no names who might be on this call. So thank you all, and thank everybody else that's volunteered for that. This is for noting this paper. It's very comprehensive. I believe I sent round the embargo list for the state of fire documentation to read, I think, to group leaders. So I guess everyone's had the opportunity to read that. There'll be plenty of time, I'm sure, to discuss it. Are there any questions?
No, Chair.
Okay, so the report is for noting. Is anybody against noting? Is anybody abstaining from noting?
No, Chair.
We're all happy to note then. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pete, for that. And we look forward to the next tranche, in fact, not round. Okay, so we now move on to item 18, 19 and 20, which I think we're going to take together for information. I think the protocol was we asked for questions in advance from these, and we received none. Just in case anybody did want to ask a question. Are there any there?
No, Chair.
Thank you. So this is for noting. Is anybody against noting? Or any abstaining from noting? Or happy to note? Thank you. And thank you very much for the officers for putting those reports together. And now we move on to item 21, which is the next meeting, which will be on the 30th of June at 2 p.m, where we're not quite sure yet, but I hope it's going to be virtually, because I'm struggling to think how we're all going to fit into some of this COVID-safe environment that can fit us all in. It may be in the car park at HQ with umbrellas issued if needs be. Okay, so I've got to move the meeting of the 30th of June. Do I find a seconder? Brenda Massey, thank you. Is anybody voting against that? Is anybody voting to abstain?
No, Chair.
Okay, that's unanimous then. Thank you very much. And now move on to item 22, which is the exclusion of press and public. I want us to resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following items of business on the grounds that they contain exempt information pursuant to Schedule 12A Part 1 of the Local Government Act 1972, and that in accordance with Schedule 12A Part 2 of Paragraph 10 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Do I have a seconder for that? Brenda Massey, thank you. Do I have any votes against? Do I have any abstentions?
No, Chair.
That's passed. Therefore, thank you, members of the public watching. We're now going to go into exempt session. And I'm going to ask Emma